Dog fans hate when I call it Florida, Georgia, but I have to explain myself every time because they would want me to call it Georgia, Florida.
Please do.
Listen, I went to high school in Florida. Yeah, I went to high school in Florida. I went to college in Florida. I say it on the show all the time. So while I was there, and my sister is a UF alum, I've been to several as a college student. I always heard it referred to as Florida, Georgia. So Dog fans, forgive me for calling it that. Keeping it in Jacksonville matters not to me if you really want to know, but my opinion is this. I do think that they need to find a way to rotate it. And my rotation would be home and home, so a game in Gainesville, a game in Athens, and then a game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and a game in Jacksonville. So if you're a senior and you do all 4 years, you will have had games at the Swamp, at Sanford Stadium, in Jacksonville, and in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I think that would be really neat, and I think it would be fair, right? Because Jacksonville, after all, is still in Florida. That's a very short drive for Gator fans to leave from Gainesville and just go north a little bit. And so it would be the same for Athens to Atlanta. So for me, if anybody's listening to me out there, I know my opinion really doesn't matter.
It matters. It matters.
I think that would be a cool way. It would be a cool way to reward players to be able to play in all 4 venues in the biggest game of the season. The Dogs and the Gators don't like each other. This rivalry in Jacksonville, they started playing it in 1933. So when you talk to Gator fans or you talk to Dog fans who are a little more seasoned, they talk about the history of the game, and a lot of them like it to be in Jacksonville. And I will say Jacksonville loves to have it, Scott, because millions upon millions of dollars come into the city on that weekend alone. So for Jacksonville, the city of Jacksonville, it's a great thing. But for me, when it comes to college football, I think what would be a great thing is seeing the Dogs play in the Swamp and seeing the Gators play in Sanford Stadium. That's just my opinion, but there is nothing like playing at Sanford Stadium on a Saturday or in the Swamp on a Saturday. I think, speaking for Dogs players, I think it would be a heck of a college experience to be able to go to the Swamp and earn a win there. It is a very tough stadium to play in, and as of right now, they don't get the opportunity to do that. And Gators don't get the opportunity to come to Athens and win on that field between the hedges. I got to give you a quick story, though, Scott. So in 1994 and 1995, This is the history I like to give on the game. Those were the only 2 years since 1933 that the Florida-Georgia game was not played in Jacksonville, and that's because there were renovations being made to the stadium in Jacksonville. So those 2 years, it was home and home. In 1994, the Dogs went to the Swamp and got beat by the Gators. The following year, between the hedges, 1995. You want to know how many points the Gators scored on the Dogs?
How many?
Do you know?
I don't.
52 points.
Woo!
Okay? They were the first team to ever hang 50 points on the Dogs at Sanford Stadium. And I want to quote Steve Spurrier, the coach at the time, the good old ball coach, what he said after the game. He said very clearly that he wanted to be the first opponent to hang half 100 on the Dogs between the hedges. And that's exactly what they did. Those 52 points are still the most scored on a team at Sanford Stadium, which that team would obviously be the Dogs. But no other team has ever been able to beat that record. So there is a little bit of history there, and I know right now the Dogs would love to go to the Swamp because obviously the Dogs have had the Gators number here in the last few years and repay that favor.